lead this discussion, please. Tony and Mr. Brower have put in most of the, in fact, all of the changes that were discussed at the interlocal meeting on Tuesday. The members of the county council that were there at the time were in favor of these changes for the most part. The only difference between what I'm proposing and what was proposed by Tony and Mr. Brower was in 6C, under mutual responsibilities, as I think it is. Yes, now, we discussed with the county council that if land is annexed into Heber City, that the city would be able to get representation on those SSD boards to help manage them along with the county. We had discussed ERU percentages, that as ERUs were annexed into the city, depending on the overall ERUs in the whole district, that the city would be able to get that kind of representation based on the amount of ERUs. I think ERUs is more accurate than acreage, even though that is another way. Now, they've written it, establish a mechanism that provides Heber City with representation. I had discussed at the interlocal meeting that within 1 year of the SSD jurisdiction being annexed into the city, that the county and city would work together for the city to gain representation on the boards. And I put in this ERU percentage, just so it was very specific and very clear with a timeline. I feel like a timeline is needed. I'd like to make C clear, if that's possible, but Danny is here. So Danny, please feel free to give input on this.
Well, if you look at, I'm not opposed to you having a place on an advisory board or administrative control board, whatever we can do, whatever the law governs we can do. Just keep in mind that Red Ledges is in special service districts. It's been operating fine. You guys, I think most of this council was here when you annexed the Witt-Kaiserman property, which is in Twin Creek Special Service District. So we've been able to solve any SSD problems or issues related to Heber having annexed property without creating a new administrative control board. So we can still operate the way we have been, but if you feel more comfortable having a person on a board, I don't see that we couldn't do that. Just the most that we can do by law, I think, is administrative control board. And the powers granted to that board can be pretty robust, with the limitation being on anything that raises fees has to come back to the county council.
I'm struggling to see why we worry about being on those boards. It'd be one more assignment for somebody on this row. And if you go, you need to learn a lot of stuff, I think, and be responsible for a lot of stuff. I think if whoever annexes knows that they're going in there and the SSD is going to supply water, sewer, and there's still a question I want to ask about pressurized. They know that going in and they're subject to that board, so I don't see it. I like it the way it was kind of approved, and I don't see the urgency to change those. It kind of relates to that. I do have a comment that something that hasn't been addressed. I discussed this with Bart to some extent, and we have it coming before us probably in the next meeting, Tony. I don't know the forget the name you put on it, that Hutchison piece, but it's not really that. It's county something that.
Let's see.
Anyway, that's an area that is not in an SSD. How do you address properties that are not in the SSD relative to our providing sewer and water, or them trying to get into the SSD? And in talking to Bart, you can clarify it if I was wrong, he doesn't, there's pro and con either way. For example, that Hutchison has a pump station and goes into the SSD if they're allowed in, or if they just have to run the line down to connect.
Except it's 10:30, and I think we have to have a
Well,
separate.
fine, but he doesn't care, he just needs to know.
For this,
He just needs to know what the policy is so he can plan toward it, right, Laura? Either way is fine, but which way are we gonna do it?
I don't think we can decide that right now. I don't think this council's been.
Well, it's as much a part of an MOU as anything we've got in there.
Area outside of the SSDs is part of the MOU?
That the city will serve all areas that are not in an SSD, or that the city will encourage annexation into the SSD for all areas. That's a simple MOU issue, just as relevant as anything that's in it.
Are you guys prepared to decide that right now?
Do you have an idea where you might suggest to put that on in the MOU?
Well, just the properties that are not in an SSD will have to connect to the city system and will be served by the city system, I guess. Let's just decide it. I'll make it that way.
Isn't that the default? Anything that's annexed to the city provides services except if they're already in SSD. Isn't that the default? Is that that's what we would naturally do?
So that's the understanding.
Great, then we're already there. We don't have to talk about
That is
it.
not that hard, does it?
No, I don't. Maybe we don't have to talk about it. Hey, let's keep going.
So that gives you policy direction, right, Barb?
But you're probably gonna have to vote on this issue of representation on the SSDs because we just have had two opinions and they differ.
Oh, we haven't, it hasn't been voted on to be in there yet. Did we pass the amendment?
No.
We
No,
got
Same.
no. And as much as I wish that we wouldn't have to worry about the SSDs, I feel like if they are our citizens and are annexed, that we need to be able to make sure the services are run as well as possible, and I feel like we need representation on this board.
So all I did was make a comment, make the motion. If it gets a second, we can vote on it.
May I say, before you do that, keep in mind that you already have citizens in Heber City who are in SSDs, and the service, they're being provided services. As far as I know, they haven't had any problems with their services.
And that's-
So,
that's
and
fine.
remember though, you have 3 members of county council who have representation within Heber City. Okay, so you've got 3 districts. And that can change based on the census, of course, but you'll have at least 2.
It's also the idea that the new annexation area has potential many, many more citizens than what Red Ledges has. Potential of a much larger area, much greater infrastructure and oversight needed.
And like I said, I'm okay with it either way. Just, I would hate for this to become a deal breaker for anyone.
Oh, sure, sure.
So you want to make a motion or not?
I will. I'm just wondering how this will go. Now, just so everyone knows, and Danny, you can verify this also, if this MOU is passed in whatever draft form tonight, then the county council would have a form to vote on, and you're planning, Danny, to bring that to the county council at the end of this month.
Correct, on the 29th.
And that would be a regular meeting vote?
Correct.
Okay. If the county council, and this is my opinion, if the county council wants to add things, or we feel like we should add things even after this motion and this vote, we'll see how it goes, and the county council wants to add things, I think that the county council should be very free to add things and send it back to us for discussion.
Obviously.
Okay.
Anybody else can agree or disagree? Okay. Can't believe I'm finally able to say this after all these months. I would like to make a motion that we pass the Heber City Expansion Area MOU between Wasatch County and Heber City. And I would like to make a change to item 6C, to just elaborate on 6C. Can I just add in at the end of the sentence, based on ERU percentages being annexed?
So are all of these part of it?
Yes, yes.
Are you
those
making
were all-
an amendment of these? Or these are already,
These
these
were
are
already
pointing out
added in,
something
and they are
else.
the red highlights.
Could I ask Heidi that you consider amending the proposed, we have in front of us in the agenda packet a proposed MOU.
Yes,
You're proposing some amendments to that.
Just that one.
If I were inclined, which I am, to just vote for the MOU as it's in the packet, but don't like your amendment, by packaging a proposal to pass something and then amending it in the motion is, so I vote against it, but I'm in favor of it. Why not pass the amendments or not pass them, or this one, and then if it passes or not, we can vote on the MOU.
Well, I guess it's just more votes. That's
Well,
certainly an
it's-
option.
well,
Can you just help me understand, because this does not look like that. The language on here is not the same as language on that.
The ideas are the same.
Within 1 year, so you've just taken that
Well,
out.
I've taken out the within 1 year. I'm hopeful that we can.
So
work
this
with
is the one
county
you're voting
good faith.
on.
This is the one, right, that's the one that's being voted on the agenda.
Okay, so you're just going to make a motion on the amendments first.
Should have made a motion.
Okay, sure, made a
Okay,
motion.
I'll withdraw my
nobody
motion.
seconded it.
No, I didn't second it. All right, I'll just make a motion that we pass the Heber City Expansion Area MOU as outlined in the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion to pass it.
I'll second that.
And a second.
I wasn't trying to bump her off of this issue. Just-
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 4-1.
We didn't matter what we did, right?
He told us up front that he was not going to say. He's transparent.
He doesn't like MOUs.
Now we're going to item number 18, to consider ordinance 2018-38, area top really fast, adopting North Village Code and MCZ Mount Community Zone. Unless someone just wants to make a motion right off.
How much have we changed those, Tony, from what the county has as proposed here?
I don't know how to answer that on a percentage or.
Well, I don't know. We talked about we were just going to adopt the county stuff for that area, but we're not. We're changing it, and there may be reasons for that. I'm just trying to get a feel of how much we're following their 20 years of effort in this area.
I think you're pretty close. Like Doug Smith was telling me the other night, you do your best as a city or county to create a zoning map, and when you're talking about a newly created area here, you put the stuff on the map, you put it on paper, and some of it's science, some of it is social science, and some of it's crossing your fingers that you've written the right stuff on the paper, and your consultants have done a good job. The changes that you've made on the map tonight, you've done in your legislative discretion to try to protect your constituents that already live there. That's a good thing. That's what you're supposed to do. I think some of the changes that you made to the land use table last week do the same thing. That's within your discretion. A lot of zoning isn't a hard and fast rule. It's trying to do the best that you can, and you have done that.
Well, I just feel like the county has put a lot of effort for quite a few years into how to manage these lands that we're now looking to annex. And I wouldn't be inclined to change a whole lot of what they've done for 15 years. So I was trying to get a feel for that. But at least certainly those things we've discussed as a legislative body tonight, we ought to change. But beyond that, I'm just trying to get a read on what would be the other most significant change you've made other than what we've discussed?
So, probably the one thing is keeping our definition of ERUs, which is one dwelling unit equals one dwelling unit. If you adopt the county's ERU definition, if you do a smaller apartment, that might count as half an ERU. So what that would mean is that you, instead of having 4 units per acre, you may actually have 8 or even 12 units per acre.
But aren't those ERUs closely tied to the SSDs? And they've given that as a capacity for, they use that to define density.
Sort of.
different than we did.
But the special service district's definition of ERUs is different than the county's zoning ordinance definition of ERUs.
So did you change this one to the SSDs?
No, the proposal is that if you have one residential unit in the city, that it be one ERU, whether it's a big one or a small one, a big unit or a small unit.
So if that acre that has our new definition of ERUs is also, of course, in an SSD, what happens to their definition?
Well, it's similar to how the county's dealt with it. They have to very carefully discuss what an ERU is to the district and what that means in the zoning ordinance, and to make sure that they create some type of definition that they are talking apples to apples. And we're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to work closely with Ron Phillips in the SSD to make sure that when we are saying one ERU, that they mean one ERU. That
Why,
they're talking
I
the same
asked
language.
Danny, why in the world didn't you develop that consistency already?
You know, I don't think I lived here when this was all created, so I
No, but
don't.
I mean, it seems like we got ERUs that mean
Yeah, I
different things
I
depending
don't
on.
either, but I know that like when it comes to the SSD, our primary concern is capacity in the
Capacity,
plant.
sure.
That's where it really comes into play. And then also recall that we didn't put this in the MOU. This would have been something that we would have placed in the MOU, but you guys, we were able to work together, and your planning department talked to our planning department, because we requested the county that you guys examine and adopt as much as you can to fit your needs the North Village Code. And so I think this is, you know, this kind of goes along with the MOU, is that this is us working together to make sure that the code that we've developed works for any potential annexations that you
Are
have.
you comfortable that we're there with this? What we're
You know, I haven't studied it enough, I can't say for sure, but I trust that your staff and our staff have worked together well enough to have worked it out. But this was our request.
That being said, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2018-38, adopting the North Village Code Mountain Community Zone as presented by our staff.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt this ordinance. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Roll call vote from this side.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion.
Do we have an amendment?
Yes, I sent out emails to all of you earlier today on Exhibit A, page 3 of Exhibit A, that we need to make it congruent with what we've already passed in Agenda Item 2 and Agenda Item 13. So is this possible if we could go to page 3 of Exhibit A and take out the low density, just take out everything after area, okay? So that it's neighborhood edge zone is more rural and primarily single-family areas, period. And take out the twin homes, the threeplexes, the twin homes, because on page 13, that's what we say. So just taking that out, that would be my amendment, please.
Okay, do we have a second?
I second it.
And a second to that amendment. Everyone clear on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. So we have an amended ordinance.
That's, we don't have
Oh, I thought, did you say nay?
No, I said aye.
It's going to pass.
it passed, okay.
Is that just the amendment?
That was just an amendment. So now we have an amended ordinance,
I
a
didn't.
motion and a second to
I didn't.
do a roll call vote starting over here.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All right, motion passes unanimously, ordinance 2018-38. Moving on to item number 19. This is a tabled item.
I'd like to untable ordinance 2018-42.
untable ordinance 2018-42.
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have a motion to untable ordinance 2018-42. We're just voting on that. Okay. Motion fails 3-2. Any item number 20? All right, anything else that we need to talk about? Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay.